Hello, BookTube. Believe it or not, I have a tiny bit of mail for you, even though it's a bleak and barren Sunday. There's no mail delivery. I did get a delivery today. A little bit weird. It's an ongoing weird enigma that I have had looked into. I cannot get to the bottom of it. So something was delivered to the house, but something also came last night. Later than I was paying attention. I was pretty eager to get to a whole night's worth of reading, and I did that, and it was wonderful. and I followed it up with a whole morning's worth of reading. I changed locations. Instead of being on the bed in a little book room, I was here on the fainting couch, and that was also wonderful. I have done a huge amount of reading in the last 2 days, and I may do more. I may read all night again. But the delivery that came today was the New York Times, the Sunday New York Times. I subscribed to the New York Sunday Times for a year and grew increasingly disgusted with it. Not playfully irritated as I always have been with the Sunday New York Times book review, the standalone book review, but seriously, personally revolted by the newspaper's partisanship in favor of Donald Trump. So I eventually just canceled my subscription, but for some reason, I have checked into this. I've had smarter people than me check into it. For some reason, I am continuing to get the paper, which is, morbid. I'm not paying for it, but it's morbidly interesting for me to know that I can look at the book review. I am throwing the rest of the paper out almost unread. I did read the whole thing today, but usually I don't. And I'll just have to, first thing on Monday, I will just have to maybe call the Times and double, triple check that you keep delivering this to me. I'm sure that this is the millionth time that this has happened to a former subscriber in the Times history. I'm sure that glitches and hiccups like this happen all the time. But it doesn't feel right getting the thing plopped on my porch when I'm not paying for it. So I will get in touch with them again and see what can be done. But in the meantime, I did get the Sunday paper, which includes the standalone book review, which is the highest profile English language book review venue anywhere in the world. That makes it inherently interesting. And for this issue, I turned immediately to a review of a major novel that I have read. I read it and really liked it, but I haven't reviewed it. It's Playground by Richard Powers, which I would want to know what the Times, the so-called paper of record, the paper of Nazi record, says about the latest novel from one of our greatest living novelists. I would want to know that anyway. But I especially wanted to know what the Times said about Playground in connection with what the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement, said about Playground. Because I have been studying that review. It was an extremely angry, extremely brainless takedown of a terrific book. And also a terrific author. It's not just, that piece wasn't just a hit job on the book, it was a hit job on Richard Powers himself, on his entire career. I don't know how an editor let it go by. I know the TLS likes contentious work, but you have to have an or in reality, usually, I would say. And I'm also a little bit curious to know if this coming week's TLS, I'm sure that I'm behind on getting them for some reason. I am always behind on getting the TLS, but I'm wondering if anybody's going to come to the book's defense in the letters page and point out, that if I forget the name of the reviewer, but if the reviewer wants to vent like this, well, they've got psychotherapy. They shouldn't be using the pages of the Times Literary Supplement to do it. So I naturally wanted to know what the Times review would be like. And the review is by Alexandra Jacobs, who's usually very, very good. She is very, very good here. I have all sorts of complaints about her review. Number one of which is that this picture is half the space she's allotted. That's half of this page. And that's absurd. That's absurd. If you're going to get her, if she can only manage to squeeze out 400 words on this thing, well, then you do half a page review and something else below it. But that's artwork like that. It's just ridiculous. That is just ridiculous to do. And also, the piece was sloppily edited. This is the Sunday New York Times book review, the standalone pull-out book review section. You don't get any higher profile than this. This is the definition of the big leagues. So she wrote this thing, and her commissioning editor read it, and then another editor read it to double check the commissioning editor, and then the group editor, the section editor read it, and who knows who else, and it was also probably read by friends of hers, and it was read by copy editors, people who aren't concerned with the substance of the review. They are just looking for mistakes, plain and simple mistakes. The Times, as far as I know, has a platoon of such people. In other words, this piece had to be seen by at least half a dozen people whose job is to make sure that it has no errors. And it has not one but two, which is ridiculous. At one point, it mentions that all the various animals that live in the ocean, and mentions octopi. PII. First of all, the normal and standard usage for the plural of octopus is octopuses. And second, even if you want to use the archaic and somewhat weird, attention-grabbing octopi, it's just one eye. It's not two. There is no correct usage of two eyes. 6 people at least had to see that, and not one of them thought, well, is that actually right? It takes 5 seconds to determine that it's not. And there it is in the print review of Playground by Richard Powers. Well, they can change it online, but the print review is never going to change. The print review is going to stay this way forever. I won't go so far as to say hysterically that once upon a time, in, for instance, the early 1970s, that would have got someone fired. Just that mistake would have got someone fired. And I won't go so far as to say that in the early 1970s, an author who opened and found that mistake would insist on getting someone fired. They wouldn't blame themselves. They'd blame the copy desk, as well they should. But it's not just that. It's not just a spelling mistake. It's also just a simple typo in the same piece that got through, where we're told that a couple in the book collects plastic waste for one of the couple members' art projects, deciding not to disturb a glass bottle colonized like a little Titanic by sponges and crustaceans. It's not to disturb. Not to disturbed. It's just the wrong word. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. It's just the wrong word printed there. Just a grade school error typo. What on earth? In a piece that already has a spelling mistake. So, on the one hand, Alexandra Jacobs is what I consider to be appropriately appreciative of the book. In the tiny amount of space that she's given, because we've got to give the whole page over to a colored picture. On the one hand, she's appropriately appreciative of the thing. It deserves a much longer review. Karl Ove Knausgaard's latest piece of crap gets a much longer review than this. In other words, the same length, a full page, but with artwork that's smaller. Instead of the artwork taking up literally half of 1,000 words. But it on the one hand, she's appropriate towards the book. It's a major thing by a major author. You don't get to write an opening throat clearing where you say this guy's always stunk and it's just because I say so. But on the other hand, the piece has errors in it, simple errors in it, of a type that small town newspapers pride themselves on not letting go through to a print edition. So to put it mildly, this review of Playground by Richard Powers actually serves to me as an extra reminder to call the Times on Monday and make sure this thing is not delivered to my doorstep anymore. Even if it weren't for how fascist friendly they are, I would still not want it. But anyway, maybe they'll fix it in the digital, in the online version. Maybe they will. But we also have a package. Just an honest-to-gosh package, something sent from a publisher. And it's heavy, so it may be a nice big finished copy of something, which is always nice. He likes his big finished copies. Oh, it is. Oh, fantastic. All right, great. It is a big finished copy of something. I feel a sneeze rattling around up there, which is not good. Always awkward. Okay, you're being a little bit excessive with the staples here. Okay, all right. We'll deal with that later. This comes out, if you're going to put me through all that, in mid-November. And we've already seen it. This is the finished copy of the James Holland's big new history of the Battle of Monte Cassino, Casino 44. Uh, let's see here. As the new year of 1944 began, the Allied army's momentum had ground to a halt just south of the vaunted German Gustav line of defense, far short of their initial objective of liberating Rome by Christmas. The fighting up the Italian peninsula had been brutal, with rugged terrain, fierce resistance, and terrible weather. While Allied leaders in London prepared for a cross-channel invasion of France later that spring, the war in the West hinged on Italy. As best-selling historian James Holland relates in his seminal concluding volume on the Italian campaign, the next 5 months saw two of World War II's most famous battles: the 4 ferocious assaults on Monte Cassino and the fraught landing northwest in the marshes of Anzio. We've already seen this on this channel, and the reason that I got a copy is I was contacted by the publicist, who's wonderful, really, really nice. Publicists are the nicest people in the book world. And she just wanted to know. Let's see if we can untangle some of this mess that's here while I'm telling you the little story of the book. She just wanted to know if I wanted a finished copy of this book. And I wrote back to her and said, well, you sent me a finished copy, and I gave it to a freelancer, to a potential reviewer for the thing. But the potential reviewer that I gave it to is really busy with 5 jobs and might not do it. So the simple thing, the life might get in the way. I think that potential reviewer should very much start reviewing every major popular release World War II volume, because it's really nice to get blurbed on these things. You're not in it for the money, but it's really nice to be in the conversation. And there's no better way to be in the conversation than for your name to be printed on a paperback, because that's always going to be there. Readers, well, as you know from your own used book shopping experience, readers 20, 30, even 100 years later are going to see that name. That no one's going to go around and fix that. It's really satisfying. But I have advocated, of course, that reviewer should do that. That reviewer is extremely knowledgeable on this subject. But I also want Open Letters to run a review of this book. So I since the publisher, I wouldn't have hedged my bets like this otherwise, because I always like to hope for the best. But since the publishers was right there in my email and happily offering a second finished copy, I said sure. I said sure, so that I have one just in case I have to review it. I am not an expert, but I have a fairly long track record in reviewing World War II books, as you can tell from the blurbs on the paperbacks of those books. So I will do it if I can't squeeze a review out of my potential freelancer, which I would really, really like to do. I will be my own last resort, is what I'm saying. So anyway, so that's our mail. The New York Times, the Sunday New York Times, in its little plastic blue sleeve to protect it from the elements. I always want to stop the driver and say, there aren't any elements here. So you can just plop the paper on the porch. It hasn't rained here in a long, long time, and it is not going to rain here for the rest of 2024 at the very least. I think it's extremely likely that it will not rain at all here in the year 2025, which I want to hasten to point out that if Massachusetts, for instance, just Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the greatest state in the Union, if Massachusetts does not suddenly divert $1 billion from its state budget for massive desalination efforts and reclamation efforts from ponds and rivers, if Massachusetts doesn't do that sometime in the next 7 months, Massachusetts cities will be uninhabitable at the end of 2025. If it stops raining here, we have massive water consumption here. Reservoirs will be completely dry. And in Massachusetts, just like everywhere else in the world, and no one really predicted this, no one had this on their stereotypical bingo card, aquifers of potable water are also vanishing all over the world. And you can't have human habitation if you don't have potable water. It's not possible to do. You need a vast amount of it every hour of every day. Now, Massachusetts has that because we have a coastline. put 10 massive desalination plants along the coastline, and Bob's your uncle. You've solved the water consumption problems for the whole of the state, provided you're really zealous about it and no one else gets it, provided that water is just for us. But Massachusetts doesn't have anything like that in place. No one in Massachusetts is planning for rain to be an extremely rare event in Massachusetts. But I think it will be. I think it certainly will be. I don't see any meteorological possibility of any kind of rainfall in Massachusetts, or broadly speaking, New England, for the rest of 2024. And it's the 27th of October. That's a mind-staggeringly long time, considering how long it's also been. But how was I on that side? Oh, right, the protective wrapper of the... boy, I don't need much, do I? The protective wrapper of the Sunday New York Times. That was right there on the doorstep. I will take steps tomorrow to get that pattern disturbed. And I also got a book. This bless this publicist. Thank her. I'll thank her on Monday. Very much a second copy of Casino 44, just in case I need to review it myself.